5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at the Big1050.com. Big Ten tournament action already underway. Joining me to look ahead to this first of the postseason tournaments for the Wolverines and project and look back to the closing of the season and all the awards that they won. Friends from MGoBlog for the roundtable, starting off first with Brian Cook. Brian, good morning. How are you?
I am good.
And then we have Seth Fisher, his right hand man. Seth, how are you?
Hey, I am nobody's little brother, Sam. Stop that.
And then, of course, Craig Ross, who has been on with us for a segment already. Craig, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I have two little brothers. I love both of them. They're both great people. So anyway, but Izzo, is worked up about it. Hey, here's something that I've been thinking about. I played basketball between 2 and 6 times a week for 56 years, and until my body couldn't handle it anymore. 56 years, at least twice, up to 6 times a week. And I probably watched 10,000 basketball games or never more, and maybe more, between high school, college, NBA. And I've only seen 2 players ever kick other players in the nuts. Fears and Draymond. And I'm trying to figure out is there some connection between the two? If someone needs to go out there and investigate that, there must be some
I've got news for you, Craig. I have got news for you because the Red Cedar message board is on this for you. Okay. They are investigating. They are at home practicing what happens when somebody is coming up behind you and has their pelvis up against yours and pushes you a little bit. What does your leg do? They discovered scientifically that your leg is automatically going to swing back and kick. And they've been doing this all across Spartandom. They are standing up behind each other and checking to see. And they have found, indeed, at least when you do it with every single Spartan, they will kick someone in the nuts. So thank you, Michigan State fans, for doing your scientific discovery. This is why you are one of the great research institutions of this country, that you will go out and sacrifice your bits for science.
The revelation is that, to me anyway, is that Tom Izzo, he condones it. He condones the behavior. That's why it persists. Brian Cook, though, let's look back on the week that was. Michigan closes out in emphatic fashion, beating Michigan State. They get the Big Ten Player of the Year, which I was, I'm kind of shaky in my faith that the league would actually see it, but Yaks put an exclamation point on his candidacy. They got the Coach of the Year, at least from one of the parties, and they got the Defensive Player of the Year. It was a great week for the Wolverines.
Yeah, and obviously all well-deserved. Like, you could have maybe made a case for Hoiberg, but first time since 1976 that someone's gone undefeated on the road in conference play, I think, is Coach of the Year material. And while other teams may have more unbalanced scoring and have a higher overall usage rate, whatever, it doesn't matter. Yaks wasn't a 30% usage guy, but he was extraordinarily efficient and a guy who could guard literally 1 to 5 in this league, and that's extreme rarity.
Yeah, and I think KenPom at the moment has him as the number 2 player in the country, and that's an offensive rating, and that doesn't consider the fact his flexibility as a defender. So yeah, I'm both these awards seem justified. Yeah, you could make an argument for Hoiberg, or maybe I think Hoiberg would be about it, but in terms of Player of the Year, it seems pretty straightforward, and I think it was unanimous. In fact, I think he was the unanimous Player of the Year. So
that takeaways from that game that are applicable moving forward. Let's start with you, Seth. I mean, this is their second game without LJ. Your thoughts on how Michigan has adapted, and what do you see as maybe being the tripping points as they head into postseason play now?
Well, I mean, Michigan State is a uniquely difficult defense to deal with, especially since since Ogachukwu got injured. They've been playing, very big at the 2. They got their 6'7" guy out there, and it makes things difficult to kind of get around on the perimeter. Now Michigan still could help their guys out a little bit more. I think you saw Ronnie Gale get into the basket, and that's going to be critical, right? Like Kason was taking time as he was turning a corner, and he had turned a corner. He was taking time from Roddy Gale, who kind of struggled this season. And what do you need from Roddy? You need that guy who, like you had last year, who could just get to the rim and make a basket, right? That was the guy that they had who can just go through go part the Red Seas and go and get you 2 points. And he's not going to be the best finisher. He probably can get to the line a little bit better. He does take a lot of contact, and that's going to get called in the NCAAs at least. He's not a spacer, but he is. If he can make those shots like he did last year, I think that we'll be in good shape with Roddy. And then Trey McKinney's got to keep stepping up, right? Like he's been playing great on defense. And that's what he's got the size to do it. And I think next year he's going to start being in that conversation for Big Ten Defender of the Year because he just outplays everybody. Cone Carr, who's not gotten outplayed by many people, found it very hard to get to the rim just because Trey McKinney was in his way. And I thought that was impressive because we all know Carr can get up and we know he's a strong player. And I thought that was a really impressive game by McKinney on defense. And those points count too, right? Like that's going to matter just as much.
Yeah. Someone pointed out the plays at the end of the Iowa game, who Michigan might see again, by Roddy. I mean, 2 great defensive plays, a block and then forcing a turnover there. And then in this game against Michigan State, like he replaced LJ's points off the bench. That's for sure. He was money off the bench. If you're Michigan State, you gotta get the good grief. They just when you think you have gained some sort of advantage with the loss of a guy, there's another guy there to fill in, Craig, and that's the beauty of this team is its depth and its defense, and both were on display against the Spartans, who shot uncharacteristically guard position in that game.
Yeah, well, Roddy, I felt was key in both games. So was McKinney. McKinney had a good half and bad half out of my memory, at least, and offensively in both of these games. But Roddy was efficient in both games in terms of his offensive production, and I think he had 12 on 9 shots, 3 assists, a block, a steal in the Iowa game, and saved the Iowa game at the end with his defense, I felt. And he's actually, in the first part of the season, I felt was Michigan's most consistent player. I felt like he played very consistent basketball and didn't have a lot of bad moments. And then he sort of as Kason came on, he sort of, as his time was limited a bit, I felt his game sort of fell off a bit, but now with his minutes back, he's played better. I have a question for you guys about the Iowa game. Do either of the three of you find that game a little problematic in that Michigan really couldn't get any offense going? Now, I know they were clutching and grabbing and holding. I mean, it's somewhat stunning to see this Iowa team, which has always been sort of the free-flowing, open court. Let's score a lot of points. Let's run it up and down. And let's not worry too much about defense. And then all of a sudden see a team that's so constrained and so defensive oriented. It's a pretty remarkable change. I have to admit, I miss McCaffrey. I miss his stare downs with Kelly Pfeiffer, for example. I don't know if anyone has seen the stare downs between McCaffrey and Pfeiffer. They're hilarious, but it's just Iowa's always been kind of fun, and this team seems nothing if unfun. But they gave us a hard time,
Brian, I guess I look at it this way: Iowa's a tournament team. You're in their place. It was their first game without LJ, and while Michigan has been subject to offensive lulls at various points and various games this season, I found it to be the case, at least in this game, that this is them adjusting. This is the adjustment period, the first game without Roddy contributing, and not Roddy, but without LJ contributing to it as well.
Yeah. I mean, they had a much better time when Cadeau wasn't on the court against Michigan State. They just kind of lean into it. And, Roddy was good against Iowa after the first boggling miss at the rim. And that's all Michigan needs from him is just go to the rim sometimes, finish, make some defensive plays. Like, the thing that the middle of the season obscured when Casey was kind of coming on is that, Gale was really an important glue guy for Michigan early in the year. And I feel like he's going to be really important for Michigan in the tournament.
No doubt. No doubt. Especially if he can give them that punch, that get to the basket ability, and his ability on the defensive end of the floor, man. You got to be able to defend on the defend the backcourt. To me, as much as we look at that Wisconsin game, for instance, a team, you talk about a team you want. I want them more than Michigan State, personally. But you pick you guys away from the basket. Can you stay in front of your man, stay in front of guards in the postseason? I actually look at that as much as people talk about stretch fives being the issue. I look at on ball defense from your backcourt and wing guys being the thing that I look at most as an issue. Not an issue, but as a thing that has to be on point for them in order to go all the way.
I mean, Michigan needs to get Roddy gets to the basket, and I think that they were practicing a little bit against like they were I think that they were trying to figure out what they had, and I don't think what you saw at Iowa was going to be exactly how Michigan even brings it in the Big Ten tournament. That was a game that they were pretty confident in beating them. You look at Iowa and it's just they got Bennett Sturts and nothing, right? Like you get it to one of their forwards down low, and he's not going to dunk it. He's just going to kick it back outside again. That team is just they don't have it. And I mean, I know Indiana's already worried about their new coach. I think Iowa should be worried about their new coach as well. I'm not that concerned about how the Iowa game went, to answer you, Craig. Just it felt to me like you're on the road. They knew that they can only call so many fouls. When they did start calling fouls, Iowa just fell apart. Michigan's thing, I'm more worried about a team like Nebraska, which actually can create offense for themselves against anybody, just because they have those NBA passes, right? Like they have that ability to kind of go off script and mess with you. And Michigan is so sound collegiately, but anyone can score in the NBA. The NBA games are ending 150 to 130 nowadays. And I know that they play an extra quarter, but that's kind of what Nebraska does. Now, not with the talent that they have, but he's running an NBA offense where they don't really have to stay inside of a beeline-esque structure. So that's the kind of team that scares me a little, just because Michigan's defense is their calling card. Their offense is elite as well, but their defense, especially with Mara on the court, is amazing. And if you get Mara in some foul trouble, and he may have some silly, does some silly things sometimes and gets himself off the court. If you get Cadeau in foul trouble and you have to play a long time without his creation, and Nebraska is a team that can do both of those, so that scares me.
I mean, do they make it past Michigan State, assuming they get that far? I feel like, and I wonder what you think, Brian, I feel like the league, you go one time through, Nebraska's still good. They can still beat anyone. They aren't that team that lost their first game to Michigan. At least they don't seem that way to me. And certainly not in Michigan's eyes, probably. Not that they've seen them. And there was some lazy defense in that game, I thought, in the first half. They really cleaned up in the second half of that game. I think if they see Nebraska again, it'd be a different game.
Yeah, I mean, well, they didn't have Mass in the first game either, so there's going to be a lot of questions about what that game looks like. I think Michigan didn't particularly play well against Nebraska, and they got hurt a lot by that 5-out stuff that they've gotten a little bit better at. And then, Roddy is Michigan's best perimeter defender, so leaning on him a little more heavily probably works out a little better. And at this point, I just kind of assume that any game in which Michigan is not 20 points up, they haven't played that well in. So.
Yeah,
it raises a good point, though, because going into this tournament and ultimately the NCAA tournament, there's this feeling that I have that the first rounds are the early rounds are givens. That's just. But as you get into playing the better teams, there's always this feeling when you go into the postseason that, man, another team could get hot and they could Loyola Marymount you out of there. And I just don't see that as being possible with this team because they guard you. It may not always be historically guarding you well, but they always guard you to the point where they're going to be in every game. Like if someone said before the Illinois game, I keep bringing this up. Illinois fan popped in and said, "Oh yeah, Illinois by 20." It's like, man, they're going to lose by 20 combined points this season. I let alone in one game. So that's how I feel about heading into this tournament. Like they're good because they guard and because they've seen the teams that they're gonna, they've whoever's had offensive success, they've seen it. Now they have a chance to prepare for it. Oh man, I think they're gonna go. They're gonna cut down these nets too.
Well, I would say right now the Big Ten tournament is certainly going to be a lot tougher than the early rounds of the NCAA. I mean, the truth is that Nebraska's a really good team, and Michigan State is a really good team, and Wisconsin and Illinois are both really good teams. Iowa may not be a really good team, but they sure as hell gave us trouble on the offensive end in that game. So the Big Ten really was, I feel, quite strong this year, stronger than I felt they would be coming in. And I agree with you, Sam, in the first two rounds of the NCAA, Michigan getting that level of competition. The big thing for me and Michigan is, can they keep Mara on the court? And I'm a huge Dusty fan. I mean, every time I go into a press conference of his, I come away thinking, hey, I learned a little bit of something here or something that I hadn't thought about. I find him incredibly interesting, and I haven't criticized him at all this year, but I think in the Iowa game and the Michigan State game, just as we were pulling away to leads, he pulled Mara out. And the games right away went right back to even games. Mara is still the key to this team on defense. He's the one sort of secret weapon they've got on the defensive end of the court, and they need him on the court as much as they can keep him on the court, and he can't get the cheap fouls. The pointless fouls that he's had in a couple of these games that limits his time on the court because you can see the difference.
Yeah, so here's the thing, Seth. We've been talking about Adai and foul trouble for the better part of the second half of the season, right? Like he's got to be on the court. I think that's the difference between them being really good and being special on the defensive end of the floor. But they, not that you want to be in that situation. I think they have a greater ability to overcome that because of Maize, because of Yaks, than they do Elliott not playing consistently like we saw him do for the first 3 quarters of the season. He hasn't had that consistency of late, and with the loss of LJ Kason, that's magnified. So I've shifted my sort of what's the thing that could trip them up. I've shifted from thinking that's Adai being in foul trouble to Elliott not playing at the level that we've seen him play at his height this season.
Well, yeah, and I mean, Cadeau is going to have some turnovers, right? And Cadeau is going to have he's going to get in somebody's face, and he's going to, pick up some fouls. I think that both those guys, Mara and Cadeau, part of the reason why they're silly fouls bother us so much is because they also both pick up fouls that aren't fouls, and I don't know if that's going to happen as much in the NCAA. I don't want to get into conspiracies and whatnot. It's just you get a reputation as being a guy who kind of gets up in people's faces, or a guy who's going to grab somebody's arm or whatever, and they start looking for it, and they start they'll start calling those. I think it's fair that they're called. I just think those are usually missed in the NCAAs when nobody knows anyone and they're just trying to call a clean game. So I think that the setting of the NCAA's is going to make that fine. Cadeau, his turnovers they've been the same thing all year, and they still will be the same thing all year. But I think that he's starting to show that he's willing to shoot more. And that was a big thing. And this goes back probably like a few weeks, right? This is something we were talking about after the first Michigan State game. That as long as Cadeau is shooting more, they're going to not be overplaying the dump offs. And I think that now he's been shooting more. Sometimes he misses a little bit, but if he has that threat, then those dump offs are going to be open and you're going to see more dunks and whatnot. And Rez, yeah, you're right. Like, they lose Mara a little bit. Rez is still, the next best center in the Big Ten. I mean, there's so many good centers around here, but like I would pick him. He's been fantastic. He can guard you 5 out. So like, you can switch 1 to 5 when you have him at the 5. The only difference is, you don't have that incredible rim protection, right? Some guys can actually get to the basket against Rez, and that's just the fact of life with him. And even so, like that's 0.99 points per possession. That's like that's what you're talking about, right? You're still talking about an excellent defense, just not one that's completely unbelievable. The question is Michigan going to be the team that wins every NCAA tournament game by 20? Or, do these things bring them back to earth? And we've seen all the kinds of things that bring them back to earth. If everything's hitting on all cylinders, it's the Gonzaga game, right? That's the ceiling for this team. The floor for this team, I think, is like what you would expect out of it. I think the floor for them is Elite Eight, at least.
Yeah. So Brian, I'm curious your thoughts. You talk about a die. There's the shots he blocks. There's the shots he alters. He changes the game, not discounting his presence on the floor being a major factor for Michigan moving forward. But I wonder what you think about Elliott. Is there any, I won't call it concern, but is your eyebrow raised any about how he's playing heading into the postseason?
No, not really. He's never been a guy who needs to score to influence what's going on in the game, right? Like, if he has the opportunity, it's good that he sees it. The thing is, for him, he has very in your face defense. He's constantly like trying to draw fouls, and I'm a little worried about that in particular being sort of a disruptor in a tournament, because like if there's one thing that I am kind of worried about, it's a game where Cadeau's in foul trouble, plays only 20 minutes, and Michigan just doesn't do very well when he's off the court, because if Mara gets in foul trouble, that's not ideal, but Michigan is still able to, deploy Morez and Yaxel at the same time. So really need 2 of those bigs to get in foul trouble, and that's 2 is more than 1. I don't know if we know this. So I think he's playing fine. I'm not too concerned about it. Like, for him, it's just turnovers, right? And if he's not turning the ball over, then Michigan's going to be in a really good spot.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, Cadeau hasn't really. I think he shot the ball 3 times against Iowa, no threes. I don't think he put up a 3 in that game, and I think he only shot it 4 or 5 times against Michigan State, maybe twice from 3. I don't know. So he isn't shooting the ball, but that's I don't think key for Michigan. Having him on the court is key, because I agree with Brian in this context, in that he needs to play Bennett Sturtz minutes. I don't know if you noticed, Sturtz has missed 3 minutes in the last 11 games. So he's
running a track meet every time he's on the court too. So
yeah,
that's amazing.
Well doable for Sturtz, well doable for Cadeau.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's quite as bad, because Iowa doesn't have anything except Sturtz. So when he's on the bench, they just don't function as a basketball team.
They have no. You're right about that. It's probably more important for Iowa than for us, but I think it's important for Michigan too. The offense declines when Cadeau isn't out there. That's just seems on its face to be true.
Yeah, I want him to get another. I want him to get another shot at Jeremy Fears. I want another shot at that. Speaking of which, the officiating in that game was atrocious. The Fears officiating, the deference that they offer him as a guy who can put the ball on the deck, versus the lack of the lack of, I would say, let's take history into account. When you see a guy kick an opponent in the junk and it's his 6th time, when do you start talking injection for a player?
Is that really a 6th time this year?
I mean, it's up
I've-
there. I mean, yeah,
I've seen it 3 or 4, but
twice.
Yeah,
So-
CBS had like they had the sizzle reel ready to go, man. Like I think it was 4 times.
Yeah, when you got a scissor reel of nut shots, come on, man. At some point, the officials have to say we have to referee this in the manner in which his reputation, should call for, at least.
Well, the answer to that is clearly no, right? Because he has one of those veers in the backcourt to get a foul on Perez Johnson, and that leads to an extended period in the late first half, where Michigan has to play Cheddar at the 4. And that's all because of a foul grift that is not a basketball play, should be adjudicated a travel. And and they give Mara a technical, and I tell you, there's exactly 0% chance that's a technical if they hadn't just given one to Fears.
Right.
Because it's a little bit of a
100%.
shove. It's unnecessary contact. It's a foul. It's never a flagrant. It's never a technical,
No, I said
unless you just gave it to Fears. So I don't know. Like, there's this tweet out there that's like, I'm not going to, this person has a fetish for being yelled at. I'm not going to participate in this perversion. And I always think about that when I see Big Ten officials talking to Tom Izzo. They must like it because they reward that behavior.
So it was just one of the officials. It's Ron Groover, who is known to be an Izzo guy, and he's not been doing Big Ten very much. Ron Groover, Ron, you don't want to get him against Duke either, right? He is like he's an old school buddy, and you saw he was talking to Fears and Izzo after every play, and the only time he was talking to Dusty was when Dusty went and got him. The other guys are fine. DJ Carsonson, I want to mention him because he's retiring. Nobody adjudicates bigs better than DJ.
Agreed.
He's the only guy who knows what's going on down there, and I appreciate that about him. He's never been great at the rest, but it's hard being an official and being good at something is important. And Jeffrey Anderson, I got respect for. Jeffrey Anderson is this guy.
You guys, who was on the crew up in East Lansing? Because that crew seemed to not be bowing down and kissing the ring and bending the knee to Izzo up there, much to his chagrin. Like they were in the irony.
Yeah.
That's what they were.
They had Sells. So Sells is Sells, right? He was the guy who fouled out Mara, and Sells is the guy who got rid of who kicked Beeline out of a game. So Sells was at that Michigan State game. He was. Right. Yeah, and he was calling fouls like the way that Sells calls fouls. He just sees a foul everywhere. That's just him, right? Then the other two are Mike Reed and Randy Richardson, who are fine. Richardson's the guy we had him in Purdue as well. Mike Reed's another guy who does kind of a lot of big games. He's usually been pretty fine. I don't have a problem with him. We get him quite a lot actually, and I think that when you don't notice there's a referee on the court, it's Mike Reed. But I like I said, this game, you give me Jeffrey Anderson, DJ Carsonson, and anyone else, and it's fine. They were all coming from Ron Groover. Every single call that was driving us nuts was coming from Ron Groover. When they went and go watch the video, it's because the other guys are ready. Jeffrey Anderson's at the baseline. He's ready to let it go. He's not going to call something because, whatever. Okay, McKinney hit the ball and it went in his hand. Michigan State's bench erupts. Ron Groover decides they're going to go look at it. And then I watch him and he's talking to them.
Class B tech.
It's a Class B tech, yeah. But I'm saying he's on it. He is ready to do as Izzo bids. And that's Class B tech. But you know what? If you're going to have one team bat the ball and have it not affect anything, or you're going to call a tech on Mara, then you have to throw Fears out of the game. You can't say that these things are equal. And that's what drives me nuts. The Big Ten has been watching Jeremy Fears again and again and again. And this is the most obvious call you can possibly make. He just kicked a guy in the nuts on the biggest stage on the last game of the season. When you've seen in the rivalry game, you were told, you guys sat around and you had to talk about this beforehand. You had CBS as the sizzle reel ready to go, and you don't throw him out of the game. And this affected the hockey game last night too. Notre Dame ran the goalie twice. And it's like those guys run the goalie. You know this about them. How do you not have that prepared? Throw these guys out of the game. This is a player safety issue. He's literally kicking people in a very sensitive area.
And you know that is a really glaring and striking thing. I know we got to get to a break, but this is your reputation. Izzo has he has been all over. They're looking at him too much, right? So you know this is the most watched game of the season. Like the spotlight is on this game, and you do another kick in the junk anyway. With all of that attention and scrutiny on you, you know it, and you kick them in the junk anyway. It's like, you know, Izzo condones it, and you know the officials aren't going to hold him as accountable as they should. These are clear.
Well, you know, Izzo post game said that was a bogus. That was his exact word. That was a bogus technical. Now he doesn't mention that 2 of the 3 technicals in the game were against Michigan, and both of the ones against Michigan were okay. They were fouls. Were they tease? I don't know. Maybe, I guess, but he doesn't mention that. My favorite Izzo thing though was in his press conference. He said, "Well, they won because they shot 1 million free throws, 1 million." Well,
I'm talking about how Yaks he hit these threes and look at this percentage. And
like
he got 2 and 3 from Jeremy Fears. He got 2
right.
and 3 from Kurt Tang. What are we talking about?
All right, but you know they didn't have 1 million free throws. It was 29-20, and 12 of those, I believe, were intentional at the end of the game. And so the free throws were fairly close. In fact, I think it was, except for the 3 on Cheddar at the end.
Well, it was literally 17-17.
17-17
with 1 minute and 10 left in the game. Like,
all right.
So
that's 1 million. And that's 1 million free throws.
I mean, sometimes I think that he does that stuff at the end of the game where he's just fouling with no purpose, which I call Tom Izzo eats his liver time, solely so he can comfort himself with the idea that the officials screwed him.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I mean, they had an intentional foul with what, 13 seconds to go, some crap like that.
It was, like, it was 23 seconds, yeah.
And they didn't try it. They didn't run a play.
Right.
And then he had his players, and then he had his players dribble it out. That was weird.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Why, was he trying to deny Michigan seniors?
Brian's right.
Or something like that?
Brian has a point. So in his press conference, he said, they shot 1 million free throws. You know.
After the refs, in their pursuit of balance, what they think is balance, to get the fouls equal or close to it, they totally distorted the game. Like, it's just no way that should have been an equal game as far as foul calls were concerned. But hey, water under that bridge.
Well, State got the first 5. This first 5 calls go on State because State is just fouling right and left. That's their game plan.
Then they decide,
and then they decide they're going to even it up. And then Izzo afterwards, man, like, you can't argue with someone who's dishonest. If someone's going to say things that they know are not true, or see things that distortedly, you're not arguing with someone in good faith. So what he says afterwards, you could just discount it, but it's just like, man, I'm so sick of this being one-sided. Well, Tom, if you're so sick of this being one-sided, what can you possibly do as the guy who's literally the coach of Jeremy Fears? What can you do about the fact that he keeps kicking people in the nuts? If you're so upset about this being called all the time.
I mean, they're just looking at him. They're looking at him so much. So the reason it's an issue is because they're looking at him kicking people.
Yeah.
Not that
why should you go to jail for something that someone else noticed?
Crime someone else noticed.
Yeah.
You know, I've always felt that Izzo on the court was the sort of Yosemite Sam of the ends of college basketball. But now I have a friend who says post-game he's Baghdad Bob. And I think that's right. I think the Baghdad Bob comparison is right on.
Okay, I got to get to a break. We got to get to a break. We'll do that right now. I was like, break, Sam. Shoot. All right. Time to get to a break. Back on the other side here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTK, online, thebig1050.com.
Clear on the radio.
So how would you like to be Indiana? and you're watching Dusty do what he did. I know they won a national championship in football. That probably mitigates any
I
sort
would
of,
say,
wrinkled feathers or ruffled feathers with regard to basketball. But man, you lose to Northwestern, bubble is popped, and you're watching Dusty literally be one of the top few coaches in college basketball, all because you sat on Mike Woodson for one more year. God, that's just lucky they won a national championship, man. Because boy, DeVries might be catching some heat. Otherwise, I don't think he'll catch any heat right now, though, because they're.
I mean, I watched that team play, and it's just like they don't have any talent.
Yeah,
Like I don't even think his kid is that good. like he's an all right offensive player, but he's really mid-major athletically, and like they didn't do enough in the portal to overcome their roster issues. And that's one of the remarkable things about Dusty. Like, he built that Florida Atlantic program in a certain way, and he's building Michigan in a completely different way. And I guess that, like, he was at Florida for a while, so it's not like he's completely unfamiliar with what goes into building a high major basketball team. But I guess DeVries hasn't done that, so kind of the best of both worlds for Dusty.
It was amazing. He said he had a remark after the game that really said. He said they were talking about him building the team in Florida Atlantic, and he said, it's easier to build a team now. It's easier to go out and do it. Not that he said it's incredibly difficult to win games and put good teams on the court, but he said it's a lot easier to do it now than it was 5 years ago. And I'm thinking to myself, what other coach in the country is talking like that? But Nobody. The guy who has it down, he's got it figured out. He knows what he's doing left and right. He knows he might lose Merez and Adai right now. Now LJ's out for the season. And this dude's like, he's gonna go in the portal and get it done. Like this dude is a cheat code, man.
I mean, other people are getting a jump on him. Auburn's already at people's games, like recruiting guys. Did you see that?
No.
I forget which, maybe it was a Wright State game or something like that. I forget which team it was, but they were, one of those low-level tournaments. Auburn had a staffer sitting there ready to recruit the portal as soon as their season ended, right? Like, as soon as the game's over, he was going to go and talk to the kid, and their coach got really mad about it. He called him out.
Well,
Dusty, right?
Apple doesn't fall far from the tree, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, Dusty, right from the beginning this year, and I thought this was remarkable, said, we're going to be really, really good. We have a really good. Well, coaches don't say that. They always temper expectations. He comes out and said, no, I got a team here, right? And he was right, of course, but it's just unusual because what you get out of him is honest opinions, what he really thinks. And even the thing about during the Michigan State game on air, he said, well, who knows? A basketball game may break out here at any moment. And
hey, were you guys surprised at all by the announcement that LJ is
back in 1 minute
next season?
Yeah, I was, because they said that his timeline was December, and I was like, well, if he's back in December, you're going to want to use him, right? So I was surprised, but we'll see how it works out.
He hasn't had any surgery yet because he apparently, from what I gather, he wants to be with the team. So
yeah, I mean, I guess, but like if there's a difference between like I can play next year and I can't, I'm like,
yeah,
maybe you should play next year.
It sounds like it ain't happening. It is a little surprising. It means they got to be in the portal, I assume, for a point guard, bare minimum. Who knows what happens with their bigs?
Yeah.
But they don't have. I mean, in their recruiting class, they don't have a point.
I mean,
they've got wings.
Some guys are easier to kind of break into your offense. I mean, yes, if he was back in January 1st,
coming back in about 10 seconds, guys, stand by.
Right.
But like, I think it takes a little time. If he comes back in February, that's probably too late for him to be valuable. So I don't know. Maybe it's just the certainty. It makes sense.
And we're back on radio in 5, 4, 3.
And we are back on Zero the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA online at the Big1050.com. folks, for those of you who are in the market for a new vehicle, you should get on board with Brighton Ford, where your next adventure begins. Ready to take the wheel of your dream Ford? Well, at Brighton Ford, it's more than just buying a car. It's stepping into a lifestyle of power, performance, and possibility. Feel the thrill, take it for a spin, and drive it home today. Experience the Brighton Ford difference where excitement meets excellence. And from now through March 31st, qualified lessees can lease a 2025 Ford Escape for as low as $246 a month, with only $3,500 down, plus first payment, taxes, doc fee, title license, and state fees due at signing. Security deposit waive, 7,500 miles per year, 24 to 36 months. Call 1-800-NEW-FORD or see dealer for full details. And folks, if you're leasing a car already, Brighton Ford will make the switch seamless. No hassle, no stress. Just call 1-800-NEW-FORD and get on board with Brighton Ford. So let's look big picture. Let's look beyond the Big Ten tournament. I'm not calling it a given. I think Michigan will win it, but let's fast forward. The national championship outlook. How has it changed, if at all, for you guys with the news of Caleb Foster's injury? I thought that it was just going to be out for the ACC tournament. Seems like he's most likely out for the season. Some people were sacking Michigan after LJ Kason went down, Brian. Well, you got to be sacking Duke somewhat when Caleb Foster goes down. I'm curious what your national outlook is at this point.
Yeah, I mean, so what Duke didn't have that Michigan had is some quality depth. So, they bring a couple guys off the bench who are kind of low usage guys, but nobody like Foster, who's 6'5", shooting 40% from three. They're going to have to play Caden Boozer, who's the smaller of the Boozer freshmen, a lot more. Sorry, freshmen. And they don't really have a backup point at all. And, Boozer's 20% turnover rate guy. So I think that does hurt them a significant amount, much more than, Michigan's hurt by losing Kason. So I do feel like, if you put a gun to my head and ask me to predict the national championship, I would pick Michigan, but I wouldn't pick them like against the field. I wouldn't pick Michigan and Duke against the field. Like, there's a lot of good basketball games to be played, and I think it's going to be a really interesting tournament.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate they lost Foster. I mean, I'm glad. I'm glad as a Michigan fan, but also this is like one of the best teams of all. Michigan and Duke are two of the best basketball teams in the history of college basketball, and this is part of me wanted that to see them again. And they're also, I think, without Nangba for the ACC tournament, and he'll probably be back by the time they need him. They'll be a 1 seed, so the first weekend won't matter to them. But they're, like Brian said, they don't have a whole lot of depth, right? And if they're going to end up playing Cameron Boozer at the 5, that's going small. We saw how much Michigan was abusing him when they just they went big against that guy. So it's going to be weird for Duke. Arizona's got depth, right? They're as deep as Michigan. So I think that there's 3 teams that are really on top. Duke is maybe falling back because of the injury to Foster, but Arizona's going to be there in the Final Four. Michigan's going to be there in the Final Four, and I think there's a lot of Big Ten teams that are going to do well in the tournament, even if they, Purdue has just they can consistently score, right? Purdue is not going to have. Purdue's got such a high floor that it's going to be difficult to knock them out early. I think the only Big Ten team I think will disappoint in the tournament is Michigan State, just because everything we discussed already.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Purdue because remember they came into the season as the #1 team in the country, and they really had a disappointing year, and I'm not quite sure why. I mean, maybe defensively they just don't have it.
Extremely high ceiling extremely high floor. And the ceiling is the ceiling, because Braden Smith's going to take a lot of pull-ups, right? Mm-hmm. And he's going to, and they're going to have a lot of possessions that are just Trey Kaufman-Renn trying to bully a guy down. And, honestly, even the best, and they are the best, even the best are not getting the kind of efficiency you could get on, let's say, Illinois' offense, right? Where Illinois can, every single time they go down the court, you have a problem.
I don't think it's. I mean, they're second in the country in offense. I think it's their defense, because they're playing Clough, who's a terrific rebounder, but not really a rim protector.
Yeah, he's slow as a buffalo.
Yeah, and Kaufman Wren is not a rim protector either. Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer. These guys aren't the kind of athletes that you need to have like a top 10 defense. And I think that's really showed over the course of the year. And before, Painter covers that up by having a 7'4" guy. He'd always have Mara back there so that you can erase all those mistakes. And Clough just isn't that guy. Like they play Jacobson a bunch, and he is a 12% block rate guy. So, but he barely played last year. He's very inefficient. He's not inefficient, but he's not making a whole lot for himself offensively. Like he's a work in progress, and it feels like a sort of a mini-me version of Michigan where they're playing two bigs almost all the time, but instead of Yaxel Lendenborg, who can check anybody in the country, they're playing Trey Kaufman-Red, who's pretty much just a bad center defensively, right? Like he's not someone you want checking fours. He's clearly not going to check a three, and they just can't switch because Clough is slow-footed. It's just they have a lot of issues defensively that have caught up with them, and they just gave up 97 points to Wisconsin in a 66 possession game.
Yeah,
that's bad.
I mean, you're right, Brian. I mean, I'm looking at KenPom, and they're 2 on nationally in offense and 99 on defense. So they just don't have that.
There are 2 teams that I looked at more than Arizona. Arizona is, I think, obviously a really talented team, but just the style, they don't shoot the three well enough or even shoot it enough, in my opinion, to get Michigan. I look at there are 2 teams that for me kind of give me Florida and the way that they've come on. I'm amazed to see them be as good as they are a year removed from the national championship. They can really, really guard. If there's another team that I look at and say, man, they're impressive defensively, after Michigan, they stand out to me. And then a little further down in the rankings, but just I'm leery of is Iowa State, man. They can shoot the basketball really, really well. I fear them and how versatile they are more than I fear there's a one point it's like, oh, you don't want to see Nebraska. I think Iowa State is the squad that of the shooting, scoring bunch that could make a real good run. I look at the Cyclones as a squad. Even
they're an excellent defensive team. I mean, they're in the top 5 or 6 defensive teams in the country, I believe. So yeah, that's a legit call on Iowa State. I mean, you just mentioned pretty much, or we've just mentioned the top 8 or 9 teams in the country.
How do you say the guy's name? Momlikovich? How do you say
Mama. They just call them moms, yeah.
50%.
Mom Silovic, yeah.
He shoots 50% from 3, man.
And they're pull-ups. Only 74% of his shots are assisted, which is low for
pull-up range. It's
no,
a little
but like
pull-ups,
that's all of his scoring. But the point is that he for a shooter, right? For a guy who's just going to be shooting, you would expect that to be in the 80s, and he's he does take a lot of those kind of they're kickouts, right?
Well, what the 2 line is going to look like is going to have a pretty big impact on Michigan, because if Illinois and Michigan State are 2s, Michigan is not going to be bracketed with them. Mm-hmm. So you might draw UConn, you might draw Iowa State, like all these teams are going to be good on the 2 line. Mm-hmm. But my thing is like, who do I not want to see on the 2 line in Michigan's region? Florida. Now, I think they're probably going to get the last 1 seed, and I don't think that that's going to be a possibility. But that's the one team on the 2 line where I'm like, I mean, I would still expect Michigan to beat them, but I would be like, oh man, that's going to be a good game. But like UConn, nah, I'm not really seeing that. Houston has a couple of dudes, but like just the way their team is shaped, I don't think that they're pretty good. I don't think they're a good matchup for Michigan from Houston's perspective, because they have Tugler, who's an undersized center, and he's a really impactful guy and a shot blocker, but he's 6'8". Like this is not a team that I think he's going to do well against. So, and I feel like as long as they avoid Florida as their 2, then I'm feeling pretty decent.
Yeah.
The one thing I wanted to point out, I really quickly on Iowa State and all these things.
We are
All right.
out of time. So
They all suck against 3 bigs, and that's what we got. So Michigan's the worst matchup for all these teams. They all don't want to see us.
more roundtable next week. Is going to be fun. We're going to be talking NCAA tournament and probably a Big Ten tournament championship. So until then,
Probably.
yeah, I got them. I got them winning, but I don't know what you guys have.
All right.
I want to speak for you. But that's going to
whatever Sam says is right.
we'll see you.
He's got to get out of here.
Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA online at the Big1050.com.